In the heart of Oklahoma cattle country, where fortunes are made and lost based on the quality of livestock, there existed a bull that nobody wanted. His name was Rusty, and by every standard measurement used in the cattle industry, he was a complete failure. Rusty stood in the far corner of Silver Creek Ranch, owned by billionaire cattle baron Jonathan Big John McAllister. At 3 years old, Rusty should have been the pride of the herd, a massive, muscular specimen ready to command top dollar at auction. Instead, he was barely 900 pounds, significantly underweight for a bull his age, with a coat that was patchy and dull rather than the gleaming black that buyers expected from premium Angus cattle. But Rusty's physical shortcomings were just the beginning of his problems. Unlike other bulls who displayed the aggressive dominance that ranchers valued for breeding purposes, Rusty was gentle, almost timid. He preferred to graze quietly by himself rather than assert dominance over the herd. His eyes held an intelligence that seemed wasted on an animal destined for slaughter, watching the world with curious awareness that made ranch hands uncomfortable. The other bulls on Silver Creek Ranch were magnificent specimens worth tens of thousands of dollars each, their powerful frames and aggressive temperaments making them highly sought after by breeding operations across the country. Rusty, by comparison, was treated like an embarrassing mistake that everyone wanted to forget. Ranch workers often joked that he was more like a pet than livestock, lacking the fierce pride that characterized premium Angus bulls. Big John McAllister had built his empire on recognizing quality genetics and maximizing every investment dollar. Rusty represented everything he despised about inefficiency, an animal consuming resources without generating profit, a constant reminder that even the best breeding programs occasionally produced failures that served no useful purpose in the competitive world of cattle ranching. Tell us in the comments, what city are you watching from? Have you ever felt like the underdog that nobody believed in? The morning that would change everything arrived with thunderclouds gathering over the Oklahoma plains, casting ominous shadows across Silver Creek Ranch's pristine pastures. Big John McAllister stood in his mahogany-paneled office, reviewing quarterly financial reports that showed his empire facing unexpected challenges despite owning some of the most valuable Angus genetics in North America. "That worthless bull's eating into our profit margins," Big John declared to his ranch foreman, Wade Patterson, gesturing toward Rusty, who grazed alone near the property's eastern boundary. 3 years of premium feed costs with absolutely zero return on investment. He's become a liability I can no longer afford to maintain. Patterson shifted uncomfortably, understanding the brutal economics that governed modern cattle operations. "Boss, I've contacted every buyer, broker, and auction house within a 500-mile radius. Nobody's interested at any price point. Even commercial slaughterhouses are offering insultingly low bids because of his poor body condition and underweight status." The conversation was interrupted when an ancient pickup truck, its blue paint faded to primer gray, rattled up the circular driveway between rows of manicured oak trees. The vehicle looked completely out of place among Silver Creek's luxury facilities, like a homeless person wandering into a country club. From behind the wheel emerged Samuel Brooks, a weather-beaten farmer whose calloused hands and sun-damaged skin told stories of decades spent working small-scale agriculture under Oklahoma's merciless sun. His worn denim jacket and scuffed boots contrasted sharply with the ranch's atmosphere of wealth and prestige. Brooks owned 40 acres of marginal farmland outside Stillwater, barely surviving on subsistence crops and part-time construction work after losing his steady job at the Phillips 66 refinery during recent layoffs. He'd heard whispered rumors at the feed store about a bull that nobody wanted, and desperation had driven him to attempt something that seemed impossible, negotiating with one of Oklahoma's most powerful cattle barons. "Mr. McAllister," Brooks said respectfully, removing his faded baseball cap to reveal thinning gray hair. "I understand you might have livestock available at reasonable prices. My family's situation is pretty desperate, and we could really use any help you might consider. Have you ever taken a chance on something everyone else rejected? Share your story in the comments below. Don't forget to like this story and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring tales." Big John McAllister studied Samuel Brooks with the calculating gaze of a businessman who had built his fortune on reading people's weaknesses and exploiting them for maximum advantage. The contrast between Silver Creek's opulence and Brooks's obvious poverty was stark enough to make even the hardened cattle baron momentarily uncomfortable with the disparity. "Brooks, isn't it?" McAllister said, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to controlling every conversation. I remember your daddy worked cattle for my grandfather back in the 80s. Good man, but never understood that sentiment doesn't pay bills in this business. Samuel nodded respectfully, his weathered hands turning the baseball cap nervously, while memories of his father's stories about working for the McAllister family flickered through his mind. Those tales had always emphasized the family's ruthless business practices, disguised beneath surface hospitality. Sir, I know this might sound presumptuous, but I heard you might have a bull that's not quite meeting your standards. I'm not looking for charity, just wondering if there's anything available that might work for a small operation like mine. McAllister's laugh was harsh and commercial, echoing off the office's expensive furnishings like coins dropping into a cash register. Brooks, you're talking about Rusty, and trust me, you don't want that animal. He's a genetic dead end, a 3-year mistake that's cost me thousands in feed alone. Even if I gave him away, you'd be taking on a liability. Patterson stepped forward, his expression showing genuine concern for the struggling farmer. Mr. Brooks, that bull won't improve your situation. He's undersized, non-aggressive, and completely unsuitable for breeding programs. You'd be better off investing in proven livestock from established sources. But something in Samuel's eyes suggested he wasn't easily discouraged by warnings about problematic animals. His own life had been filled with challenges that others considered insurmountable, and he'd learned that sometimes the most unlikely solutions produced unexpected results. What would you want for him? Samuel asked quietly, his voice carrying the determination of a man with nothing left to lose. McAllister's expression shifted from amusement to irritation. You're not listening, Brooks. That bull is worthless. I'd practically have to pay someone to take him off my property. Then name your price, Samuel replied with surprising firmness. Even $1 would help you recoup something from your investment. The unexpected voice that would change everything came from the ranch's oldest employee, Miguel Santos, who had been silently observing the conversation from the office doorway. At 73, Miguel possessed 5 decades of experience with cattle that transcended formal education, his weathered hands having delivered thousands of calves, and his intuitive understanding of animal behavior earning respect throughout Oklahoma's ranching community. Pardon, Mr. McAllister, Miguel said in accented English, stepping into the room with the careful dignity of someone who had earned his place through decades of faithful service. Perhaps I could speak with Mr. Brooks about this bull before any decisions are made. McAllister's expression showed mild irritation at the interruption, but his respect for Miguel's expertise prevented any harsh response. The old vaquero had saved the ranch countless dollars through his uncanny ability to predict animal behavior and identify potential in livestock that others overlooked. Miguel led Samuel outside toward the pasture where Rusty grazed alone, his movements deliberate and thoughtful as he studied the rejected bull with eyes that had seen thousands of cattle throughout his long career. What others viewed as failure, Miguel recognized as something entirely different. Senor Brooks, Miguel said quietly, his voice carrying the wisdom of someone who understood animals better than most people understood themselves. This bull, he is not what everyone thinks. Yes, he is small. Yes, he is gentle. But sometimes these qualities are not weaknesses. Samuel listened intently as Miguel explained his observations about Rusty's behavior patterns, his exceptional intelligence, and his unusual ability to calm other animals during stressful situations. The old vaquero had noticed that Rusty possessed qualities that couldn't be measured by conventional standards, but might prove invaluable under the right circumstances. In my country we have saying, Miguel continued, his eyes fixed on Rusty's peaceful demeanor. The tree that bends in the storm survives while the strong oak breaks. This bull, he has survived 3 years of rejection because he has something inside that others cannot see. Miguel pulled a worn leather journal from his jacket, its pages filled with decades of observations about exceptional animals he had encountered. Your father, he would understand. Some cattle are meant for different purposes than what the industry demands. This bull might surprise everyone if given proper chance. Samuel felt something stirring within him as Miguel spoke, a recognition that perhaps his desperate gamble might contain more wisdom than anyone realized. The moment of truth arrived when Samuel Brooks reached into his threadbare wallet and extracted a single crumpled dollar bill, the last money he had until his next construction job began the following week. The weight of that decision pressed down on him like Oklahoma summer heat, representing not just a financial transaction, but a leap of faith that could either save or destroy his family's future. $1, Samuel said, extending the bill toward Big John McAllister, with hands that trembled slightly from the magnitude of what he was attempting. That's all I can afford, but I'm willing to take full responsibility for this bull regardless of any problems he might have. McAllister stared at the worn currency with an expression mixing disbelief and amusement, as if someone had just offered to buy his ranch with pocket change. The absurdity of selling a purebred Angus bull for a single dollar struck him as either the most ridiculous business transaction of his career or perhaps the most honest assessment of Rusty's actual market value. Brooks, you realize this animal has consumed thousands of dollars in feed, veterinary care, and maintenance over 3 years? You're offering $1 for an investment that's cost me more than most people earn in months. But something in Samuel's desperate determination reminded McAllister of his own grandfather's stories about Depression-era ranchers who survived through unconventional decisions when traditional methods failed. Perhaps there was twisted justice in letting this rejected bull find his destiny with someone who understood failure and perseverance. Miguel stepped forward, his aged eyes bright with encouragement as he watched Samuel make the most important decision of his life. Sometimes, senor, the most valuable things cost the least money but require the most courage. The handshake that sealed the deal lasted only seconds, but its implications would ripple through both men's lives in ways neither could imagine. Samuel had just acquired his first bull for less than the cost of a candy bar, while McAllister had finally rid himself of his most embarrassing livestock failure. As they loaded Rusty into Samuel's borrowed trailer, the bull looked back at Silver Creek Ranch with eyes that seemed to understand he was leaving everything familiar for an uncertain future with strangers who saw potential where others had seen only disappointment. What's the biggest risk you've ever taken with just faith to guide you? Tell us in the comments below. The 40-acre Brooks farm presented a stark contrast to Silver Creek Ranch's manicured perfection, with its weathered barn, patched fencing, and fields that spoke of years spent fighting against drought, debt, and diminishing returns. When Samuel's battered trailer pulled into the farmyard, his wife Martha and their teenage daughter Emma emerged from the house with expressions mixing curiosity and concern about their latest addition. "Samuel Brooks, please tell me you didn't spend money we don't have on another one of your projects," Martha said, her voice carrying the weary tone of someone who had watched too many well-intentioned plans fail to improve their desperate financial situation. The family gathered around the trailer as Rusty stepped onto Oklahoma soil that would become his new home, his gentle demeanor immediately apparent as he showed no aggression, despite finding himself in completely unfamiliar surroundings. Emma, who had always possessed an intuitive connection with animals, approached the bull cautiously while her parents discussed the wisdom of Samuel's impulsive purchase. "Dad, he's so calm," Emma observed, extending her hand toward Rusty's massive head with the fearless confidence that only teenagers possess. "Most bulls would be snorting and pawing by now, but he acts like he's been here forever." The first major test came when neighboring ranchers learned about Samuel's acquisition, their reactions ranging from amusement to outright mockery about his decision to invest in Silver Creek's notorious failure. Jake Morrison, who owned the adjacent property, made no effort to hide his skepticism about Samuel's judgment. "Brooks, you finally lost your mind completely," Morrison declared during a chance encounter at the feed store. "That bull couldn't impress a blind cow, and you're thinking he'll somehow improve your operation? You threw away money you couldn't afford on an animal that Big John McAllister couldn't wait to get rid of." But unexpected support came from Dr. Helen Parker, the county's most respected veterinarian, who had heard about Rusty's unusual temperament and decided to examine him personally. Her findings surprised everyone, including herself, as she discovered that Rusty's gentle nature masked exceptional health and intelligence that conventional assessment methods had completely overlooked. "Samuel, this bull's genetic markers are absolutely extraordinary," Dr. Parker announced after completing comprehensive tests. "His muscle fiber density, bone structure, and cardiovascular capacity are all within premium ranges. Whatever caused his small size wasn't genetic inferiority, it was environmental stress that proper care could potentially reverse." Don't forget to like this story and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring tales. Winter arrived early that year, bringing with it challenges that tested both Samuel's resolve and Rusty's ability to thrive under conditions far removed from Silver Creek Ranch's luxury accommodations. The Brooks family's financial situation deteriorated further when Samuel's construction work dried up due to seasonal weather, leaving them dependent on Martha's part-time income from the local diner and whatever crops they could salvage from increasingly unforgiving soil. Feeding Rusty became a daily struggle as hay prices skyrocketed and the family faced impossible choices between maintaining their bull and meeting basic household expenses. Neighbors who had initially mocked Samuel's purchase now whispered that his stubbornness was endangering his family's welfare for the sake of a worthless animal that served no practical purpose. The crisis deepened when Jake Morrison offered to buy their land at below-market prices, claiming that Samuel's poor judgment with livestock investments proved he lacked the business sense necessary for successful farming. The pressure intensified as Martha began questioning whether her husband's faith in Rusty was misguided optimism that would ultimately cost them everything they had worked to build. "Samuel, we're 3 months behind on the mortgage," Martha said during a heated kitchen table discussion, her voice breaking with exhaustion and fear. "The bank's threatening foreclosure. Emma needs money for college applications, and we're spending our last dollars feeding a bull that everyone says is worthless." Dr. Parker's continued visits provided the only encouragement as she documented Rusty's remarkable transformation under the Brooks family's care. Despite inadequate nutrition and basic accommodations, the bull was gaining weight steadily while developing muscle definition that had never appeared during his years at Silver Creek Ranch. "Something extraordinary is happening here," Dr. Parker recorded in her notes. "This animal is responding to environmental factors that standard industry practices never considered. The emotional stability provided by consistent, gentle care appears to be unlocking genetic potential that stress had previously suppressed." But even Dr. Parker's optimistic assessments couldn't solve the immediate financial crisis that threatened to separate Rusty from the family that had begun to love him. Samuel faced the most difficult decision of his life: sacrifice his belief in this remarkable animal to save his family's future, or risk everything on the possibility that Rusty's hidden potential might somehow provide the miracle they desperately needed. As winter storms battered their modest farm, the answer to their prayers would come from the most unexpected source imaginable. The moment that would define everything arrived on a February morning when disaster struck the Brooks farm with devastating force. A violent ice storm had damaged power lines throughout the county, leaving their property without electricity for heating or water pumps during the coldest week in Oklahoma's recorded history. Samuel discovered their backup generator had failed, and without immediate repairs costing money they didn't possess, both family and livestock faced life-threatening conditions. Emma found Rusty that morning standing protectively over their 3 remaining cows who had huddled against him for warmth during the brutal night. The sight that greeted her defied every assumption about cattle behavior. Rusty had somehow positioned himself to shield the smaller animals from Arctic winds while sharing his body heat to prevent hypothermia. "Dad, you need to see this," Emma called urgently, her breath visible in the frigid air as she pointed toward the pasture where Rusty continued his vigil over animals that weren't even his responsibility. Dr. Parker arrived within hours, battling treacherous road conditions to reach the farm after receiving Emma's frantic phone call about unusual animal behavior. What she witnessed challenged fundamental principles of bovine psychology and herd dynamics that she had studied throughout her veterinary career. "This is unprecedented," Dr. Parker documented while photographing Rusty's protective stance. "Bulls typically prioritize their own survival during extreme weather events. This animal is demonstrating empathetic behavior and self-sacrifice that suggests consciousness levels we've never scientifically acknowledged in cattle." The ordeal intensified when one of the cows, a pregnant heifer named Belle, went into premature labor triggered by stress from the severe weather conditions. Without proper veterinary facilities or heated buildings, both mother and calf faced almost certain death in temperatures that had already claimed livestock throughout the region. Samuel and Dr. Parker worked frantically to assist the difficult birth, while Martha provided what support she could with their limited resources. But it was Rusty's behavior that proved most remarkable. The bull maintained his position as windbreak and heat source throughout the 12-hour labor, never abandoning his protective role despite his own discomfort and exhaustion. When Belle's calf finally arrived, weak and struggling to survive in the hostile environment, Rusty gently nuzzled the newborn with encouragement that seemed almost human in its tenderness. The image of this rejected bull nurturing new life while sacrificing his own comfort captured something profound about the nature of true value that transcended market measurements. The survival of all animals through that terrible week would become local legend, but more importantly, it revealed Rusty's character in ways that would soon attract attention from sources that nobody could have anticipated. Word of Rusty's extraordinary behavior during the ice storm spread through Oklahoma's agricultural community like wildfire, carried by Dr. Parker's detailed documentation and the testimony of neighbors who had witnessed something that challenged everything they thought they knew about cattle consciousness. Within weeks, the Brooks farm became an unlikely pilgrimage destination for ranchers, veterinarians, and animal behaviorists seeking to understand the phenomenon that mainstream science couldn't explain. The transformation was miraculous to witness. Under the Brooks family's loving care and proper nutrition, Rusty had gained nearly 400 pounds of solid muscle. His coat had developed the lustrous black sheen that Angus buyers demanded, and his gentle confidence had evolved into natural leadership that other cattle instinctively followed. Yet his most valuable trait remained his unprecedented emotional intelligence and protective instincts. Dr. Amanda Richardson, a renowned animal behaviorist from Oklahoma State University, arrived to study Rusty's unique characteristics and left convinced that she had encountered something revolutionary. This bull displays cognitive abilities and emotional responses that redefine our understanding of bovine consciousness, she announced to agricultural journals across the nation. The breakthrough moment came when Texas billionaire cattle investor Clayton Westbrook visited the Brooks farm after hearing rumors about an exceptional bull hidden on a small Oklahoma operation. Westbrook had built his fortune identifying undervalued livestock genetics, and his arrival in a convoy of luxury vehicles created quite a stir in the farming community. "Brooks, I've traveled 6 states looking at premium Angus bulls this year," Westbrook announced after observing Rusty for less than 10 minutes. "I've never seen anything like this animal's combination of physical excellence and behavioral sophistication. Name your price, I'm prepared to offer whatever it takes." Samuel listened quietly as Westbrook described breeding programs worth millions, artificial insemination contracts that could generate lifetime income, and promotional opportunities that would make Rusty famous throughout the livestock industry. The offers escalated from tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands, each proposal more tempting than the last for a family struggling with mortgage payments and uncertain futures. But as Samuel watched Rusty interacting gently with Emma, who had become the bull's closest human companion, he realized that some treasures couldn't be measured in dollars. The animal who had been rejected as worthless had proven that value existed in forms that transcended commercial calculations. "Mr. Westbrook, I appreciate your generous offers," Samuel replied with quiet dignity. "But Rusty isn't for sale at any price. Some partnerships are more valuable than profit." Samuel's refusal to sell Rusty created unexpected consequences that rippled through Oklahoma's cattle industry, like stones thrown into still water. Clayton Westbrook's public rejection stung the billionaire's pride, leading him to launch a subtle campaign questioning the Brooks family's ability to properly manage such valuable genetics without professional resources and scientific expertise that only major operations could provide. Industry publications began featuring articles suggesting that exceptional animals belonged in facilities capable of maximizing their genetic contribution to breed improvement rather than remaining hidden on small farms where their potential might be wasted. The pressure intensified when artificial insemination companies offered lucrative contracts that would allow Rusty to remain on the Brooks farm while contributing to breeding programs nationwide. Martha found herself torn between financial security and family principles as medical bills from her father's recent heart surgery threatened to overwhelm their already strained budget. The mortgage company had granted a temporary extension, but deadlines loomed like storm clouds on their horizon, making every day a struggle between survival and integrity. "Samuel, we could solve all our problems without giving up Rusty," Martha argued during late-night discussions about their impossible situation. "These breeding contracts would provide steady income for 20 years while keeping him right here on our land." Emma, now 17 and preparing for college applications, watched her parents wrestle with decisions that would determine her educational future. The scholarship opportunities that Rusty's fame had generated offered paths to veterinary school that seemed impossible just months earlier, yet accepting them felt like commercializing the relationship that had transformed their lives. The most serious challenge came when Jake Morrison, frustrated by the Brooks family's sudden prosperity and attention, filed complaints with county authorities alleging that their small operation lacked proper facilities for housing livestock of Rusty's value and significance. Inspection teams arrived demanding upgrades that would cost thousands of dollars the family couldn't afford. Dr. Parker rallied support from the veterinary community, organizing colleagues to provide expert testimony about Rusty's exceptional health and the superior care he received on the Brooks farm. Her documentation proved that love and attention produced better results than expensive facilities and corporate management, but bureaucratic pressure continued mounting. The crisis reached its peak when state agricultural officials threatened to relocate Rusty to university research facilities, where his unique characteristics could be studied scientifically while ensuring proper care standards. The legal battle that followed would determine whether individual farmers possessed rights to maintain extraordinary animals, or whether exceptional genetics belonged to institutions capable of maximizing their scientific and commercial potential. Do you think some relationships are more valuable than money? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like this story and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring tales. The turning point came from an entirely unexpected source when Miguel Santos, the elderly vaquero from Silver Creek Ranch, appeared at the courthouse during the custody hearing wearing his finest clothes and carrying a worn leather folder that contained documentation spanning 5 decades of cattle breeding experience. His testimony would prove decisive in determining Rusty's future. "Your Honor," Miguel began in careful English, his weathered hands steady despite the magnitude of what he was about to reveal. "I have kept records of every bull born on Silver Creek Ranch for 50 years. This animal they call Worthless was sired by El Conquistador, the finest breeding bull in Texas history, worth over $2 million. The courtroom erupted as Miguel produced certified pedigree documents, proving that Rusty's bloodline traced directly to legendary champions whose genetics commanded premium prices throughout North America. Big John McAllister, summoned to verify the records, sat in stunned silence as he realized he had sold a multi-million-dollar animal for $1 due to his failure to recognize potential disguised by environmental stress. Dr. Richardson provided expert testimony explaining how trauma and improper care during Rusty's early development had temporarily suppressed his genetic expression, creating the illusion of inferiority that had fooled even experienced professionals. Under optimal conditions provided by the Brooks family's loving attention, his true breeding value had finally emerged. "This case represents more than livestock ownership," Judge Patricia Morrison declared during her ruling. "It demonstrates that value cannot always be measured by conventional standards, and that dedicated care can reveal potential that expertise might overlook. Custody of this animal will remain with the family that recognized his worth when others saw only failure." The legal victory established precedents protecting small farmers' rights to maintain exceptional animals while inspiring legislative changes that prevented corporate interests from seizing valuable livestock through bureaucratic manipulation. Samuel's determination to honor relationships over profit had protected not just Rusty, but the principle that love and dedication could triumph over wealth and influence. Media coverage of the case attracted international attention as Rusty's story became symbolic of hope for underdogs everywhere. Agricultural universities established scholarships in his name, while animal welfare organizations cited his transformation as proof that proper care could overcome any genetic disadvantage through patience and commitment. Most remarkably, Rusty's influence extended beyond individual success to inspire broader recognition of emotional intelligence in livestock, leading to industry-wide changes in animal handling protocols that prioritized psychological well-being alongside physical health throughout commercial operations. The bull, who had once been considered worthless, had proven that true value transcended market calculations, residing instead in qualities that could only be revealed through relationships built on trust, respect, and unconditional love. 5 years later, the Brooks farm had transformed into the most respected breeding operation in Oklahoma, with Rusty serving as the foundation sire, whose offspring commanded premium prices throughout North America. But success hadn't changed the family's values. They continued operating on principles of compassion and integrity that had guided their original decision to rescue a rejected bull. Emma graduated summa cum laude from veterinary school on a full scholarship funded by Rusty's breeding fees. returning home to establish a practice specializing in animal behavioral therapy. Her techniques, developed through years of working with Rusty, revolutionized treatment approaches for traumatized livestock across the agricultural industry. The $1 investment had generated millions in breeding revenue, but the Brooks family's greatest treasure remained their relationship with the gentle giant who had taught them that true value couldn't be measured in monetary terms. Rusty lived peacefully in his favorite pasture, surrounded by his offspring and the family who had never stopped believing in his potential. Miguel Santos, now honored as the most respected cattle judge in Texas, frequently visited to share stories with young ranchers about the importance of recognizing quality that others might overlook. His wisdom had saved not just one bull, but had inspired an entire generation to value character over conventional measurements. Samuel often stood at the fence watching Rusty graze, marveling at how a single dollar and an act of faith had changed their lives forever, proving that miracles still existed for those brave enough to believe in them.